So if you're not a millionaire in your lifetime, there's a significant issue and you have a financial problem. And that's not what everybody wants to hear, but I'm here to tell you the truth, and that's the reality. And so this is not an emotional conversation. This isn't all this guy's talking from a high place. This is just basic math and basic logic. And I'm going to present exactly why, if you don't become a millionaire within, let's call it 75 years, I'm going to use that as my baseline throughout this conversation of my average lifespan, there's something you're not doing correctly, and you could easily fix that. Because let's start off with that specifically. So if you are watching this, I'm going to actually share my screen and show you specifically as to how easy this actually is for most people. So as you see on the screen, let's assume that you start with $0. You have nothing to your name. You're a baby. You come out of the womb. You have $0. If you just invest $7 for 75 years at historical market returns, you will become a millionaire. Now, does everybody want to become a millionaire in 75 years? No. But my point here is to show $7 a month will turn you into a millionaire, meaning it doesn't take as much as you actually think. And why this is a logical, not an emotional conversation I'm about to have. And why I know a lot of people can do this very easily. In fact, let me walk through a very easy average situation. Now, we have all sorts of situations out there, right? There's going to be, people with a lot of money, people with a little bit amount of money. There's going to be all sorts of different data points that we can use. I'm going to use an average one. And I'm also going to use more so an average student that works with me and what their situation looks like. But if I'm taking the average income, which is, let's call it $75,000 a year, and I'm investing, I started with $0 and I'm investing 20%. So you might wonder, how did I get to 20%? That's too much to save and invest. No, it's not. Because if you have the right structure and the right system and you don't have justification because all of your friends, family, and colleagues are living a specific life, then you will be able to save 20% and you can live on 80% of your income. Most people say they can't because they've grown up in an environment where the norm is living above the means. And so you have to kind of move down a notch in the societal ladder in order to save 20%, or at least perceived down in the ladder, right? And a lot of people can't handle that, or they don't want to come to reality with that, or their norm is their norm and they don't want to change from that. And it's embarrassing to admit that, hey, I got to live in a cheaper neighborhood or drive a cheaper car because I need to save 20%. But it's just the reality. It's just basic math. So you can continue to make excuses, or you can just save 20% and figure a way out. So we talk about this all the time. Most people tell me they have an income problem. They come to me and they talk to me, and they're amazed at what we find, is how much money they found. It's a common trend. Our average student saves about $24,000 extra a year. So if you're making anything under $100,000, there's that 20% probably right there. And that's an average student. So anyways, as you can see on the screen, if we start with $0, we have no net worth, which is typically not the case. Typically you start with something positive or negative. And you invest 20% of that $75,000 salary, that's $15,000 a year, or $1,250 a month. And you invest this in historical market returns for 21 and a half years, you instantly become a millionaire in 21 and a half years, which is why I think it's a lot easier than people actually make it out to be. And I show people this all the time. It's not as challenging as you actually think once you actually look at the numbers and take away the emotional aspect of it and all the biases that you have growing up and the lack of education that might have happened or not happened in the household. And you've worked with a finance therapist like all my students do within Budget Dog Academy, all those types of things. There's a reason behind the success of my students. It's not because they're different than you. They're the same person as you. You hear them talk on this podcast all the time. They just decided to apply themselves and figure out a system that works for them. And everything's independent or systemized to them, their particular situation. It's not a one-size-fits-all. We are not Dave Ramsey here. So with that being said, let's jump to another example. And I'm going to walk you through like literally an actual example of like a typical, let's call it a typical average student I typically see. So as you see on the screen, if you're listening, you don't see this, but I'll walk you through it. Let's say you start with $400,000 as your base, as your target. Like most people come in with some sort of a net worth. Let's say it's $400,000. Pretty common, pretty reasonable, depending on what age you are. Obviously, there's a lot of factors there, but let's just say $400,000. I see it all the time. Let's say you're investing $2,500 a month during this time, and you're getting historical market returns as well, right? That's the only assumptions that we can have. That takes 7 years to become a millionaire. So it's actually really simple at its core. And $2,500, where did I get that number? So $150,000 times 20% is $30,000. $30,000 divided by 12, $2,500. So that's where I got that number. And it's extremely simplified. If you're making $150,000 to invest 20% to make this very, very easy for you. And there should be no issue with this. But I think people overcomplicate this game because they don't know what to do, where to start, or what to even think. The very first thing you have to do is get into the right mental frame. If you don't think you can build wealth because of the way you grew up, if you've never built wealth and you've been defeated or there's been shame around money or embarrassment around money, it's going to be hard to ever get past that stage. And that's just an emotional point that you're going to stay in your whole life. If you're able to get past that stage, I can tell you right now very confidently that the rest is way easier. That first emotional stage that you go through is the most complicated by far stage that you can go through. And when you're in your emotions, you're thinking very illogically. And I'm a very logical person, or at least I think I am, or at least try to be, as far as money goes. We're all human, we're all have emotion, but at the end of the day, I'm a very logical step-by-step sequence person and systems. And so if I know I can get past that emotional burden, I go through the emotional cycles of change. I talk to Heather, my finance therapist. You guys have heard her talk on this podcast before. And she walks you through your subconscious and why you're thinking the way you do, and you get past that stage. The rest of it is structure. So the second piece of the puzzle is structure and systems, and that's what we help build in Budget Dog Academy. It's super simple. It's not a complex system. It's not like some crazy rocket science. It's simplified stuff that allowed us to become multimillionaires, allowed my students to become, actually today, and I'm not even going to share the screen, so it's literally a waste of my, actually literally 20 minutes ago, I'm not even kidding, Chris, one of my students, became a millionaire. He just posted, I had a huge milestone, and that just happened to pop up right a couple seconds ago. So if you can't tell this thing works, it works. We have a lot of people who become millionaires all the time. And it's not anything rocket science we're doing. It's literally simplification, because I always say simple scales, fancy fails. And if you're able to apply these concepts to your personal life after you get past the emotional side, the rest should be pretty simple. And it's never an income problem. It's rarely an income problem. The average income in America is totally fine. It's that people make it out to be not fine, or they decide to live in New York City and they make well below the average income for New York City, if that makes sense. There's some things that you have to change about your life, and that might be hard to hear for some people, but it's just the reality. If you want to change, you're going to have to make hard change, or you're going to have to do hard things to make that actual change happen. And so the quicker you understand that, the quicker you apply yourself, the richer you're going to get, and the more wealthy you're going to get, the better life you're going to live, and the quicker you're going to get to financial freedom. And I can assure that 100%, because I've seen it happen over and over and over. So I want to leave this message today and letting you know that I'm here to help you. I'm here to put you in a good spot. I'm here to show you exactly what you need. There's a lot of things from a lack of education, from a lack of systems, from a lack of emotional control around money that's holding you back in a major way. My whole entire academy is geared towards that. Is because I know the problems. I've worked with thousands of people. I've seen the issues, and I've been able to over the years, let's call it the last 5, 6, 7 years, to overcome those things or help other people overcome those things on a daily basis. And once they overcome those things, it's amazing the smile that lights up on their face, because they finally know they're in control of their finances once and for all. It's their decision. It's not their boss's decision, the president's decision, their ex-wife's decision. It's your decision, and you get to choose that. And I want you to know that. And that's what the whole podcast is about, is to show you the reality of your situation and the reality of how much power you have in your situation. Every time you blame somebody else, point fingers, or do something, you're taking power away from yourself. And that's a frustrating feeling, to leave you hopeless and feel lost and feel shame and feel guilt and all those negative emotions. It's time to change. I'll see you guys next episode.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brendan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.